able to jump through all the hurdles and manage to purchase a piece of property in according, with the zoning laws, then that's where the basic extra legal, violent, direct action vigilantism takes place. And so there are many incidents in the history of St. Louis of Black people moving into a neighborhood or onto a block and having their houses vandalized, their front windows broken, the air let out of their tires, crosses burned in their yard, all the things that we know happened over and over again. And so that there's a final kind of frontier of resistance that has to do with direct action on the part of white vigilantes.
And I think there's that seems like a natural progression on some level, right? When the institutional support becomes for that type of segregation starts to wane, that's what you rely on. Like, I'm not convinced that we're not seeing that writ large, frankly, in this country in many respects. Maybe it's a little more slow moving and a little bit more obscured. But let's, there's some things I want to talk about in terms of the dynamic of property taxes, and I think it's well known in the wake of the protests in Ferguson about how the African American community, particularly in Ferguson, was basically used as an ATM by the municipality. And you write about how it also is not just a question of sort of control, but also a way of subsidizing, major corporations that come in and don't have to pay the property taxes that one would anticipate. And this is a way of making up for that. But what I want to do is sort of jump to what's going on today with COVID-19. I know you've written about that, and the dynamic that we're seeing with COVID-19 is, I guess, perhaps unsurprisingly, forged in these dynamics that we've been talking about. I mean, just for a moment, let's just touch on this, because like any type of crisis, it seems to me, in most instances, it begins to sort of reveal as the tide goes out. You start to see who is most vulnerable and who is whose boat is most sort of, I guess, beached, as it were.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think I was on here listening a little bit before you brought me on. And I think one of the things you said is the virus doesn't discriminate, right? The virus doesn't know the difference between African Americans and white people. But in St. Louis, in the city, you have a population that's, basically 47% Black, and almost 3/4 of the cases are of the documented COVID cases, and we would have to then imagine the difference in testing in the white and Black communities. 3/4 of the documented cases are among African Americans. So you have a hugely disproportionate rate of viral infection in the African American community. And that is not explicable according to any kind of simple, immediate notion of white racism. It is explicable only in terms of a deep and historical notion of white racism. And so what I mean by that is that the virus itself isn't racist, but the infection rates reflect the spatial and social character of a city in which race and white supremacy have been structured into the fabric and the daily life of all of the inhabitants. And so the piece I wrote with another historian and a professor of public health at Washington University, Colin Gordon is the historian, the professor of public health is Jason Purnell, and an activist, Jamala Rogers, from St. Louis, who runs the Organization for Black Struggle, tries to document the history of spatial control and of social disinvestment in North St. Louis, including the closing of the hospital in North St. Louis, the public hospital in North St. Louis, which was a nationally renowned Black hospital, Homer G. Phillips, in 1979. to help us understand the way that to help us understand these racial disparities as indicative of inequality and injustice that are deeply structured into our society.
And lastly, just also we should just touch on Ahmaud Arbery, because this is I don't know, it is a fairly I don't want to say classic case, but I mean this is I don't know that it's getting the same attention that it should or would, absent all the sort of news about COVID-19. But we're in a situation where the Georgia Attorney General is asking the feds to come in. My sense is that under the previous administration, the feds would already be there at this juncture. But just give me your sense of something like that, particularly in the wake of what we've seen, whether it was Michael Brown, but other killings that of black folk at the hand of white folks with guns.
Well, it's a lynching, right? So a lynching is when vigilante whites take the law into their own hands and murder black people. And that's what that is. And so in that sense, it is, it's on a spectrum but it's a little bit different from the police murders from Tamir Rice and Michael Brown say. It's a little bit more similar to Trayvon Martin. I think that the thing that I think most powerfully about this, and this is something that I learned from watching both of those cases, Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, is that this is something that happened, I guess, at this point almost 3 months ago. And what I learned from that is how hard it is to bring these things to light, right? I mean, it was a very similar story in the case of Trayvon Martin where the murder happened, and it took months for activists to gain the traction to get the murder national attention. And that seems to me to be what's happened in Georgia. And didn't happen in the case of Michael Brown because the people were in the streets so quickly and were able to gain the attention. And so I guess what I see in those stories is what's interesting and terrifying to me about that is, first of all, to imagine that there are many stories that we don't hear about. I think that's unarguable. And secondly, the difficulty that there is in trying to get the story out, but thirdly, then to emphasize the action, the radical truth telling that people do in order to finally get these stories out. Just in relationship to what we've been talking about race and space. I mean, it's a spatialized racial killing, right? The notion is that there are neighborhoods in which, by design and through concerted historical action, any African American person looks out of place. And so, the first thing that I see when I see one of those cases is the evidence of history and of the successful history of white supremacy in creating an environment in which African Americans are hyper visible in most white neighborhoods of the United States.
Walter Johnson, the book is The Broken Heart of America, St. Louis and the Violent History of the United States. We will put a link to that at majority.fm. Thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been energizing.
I'm glad to hear that. All right. Thanks again. All right, folks.
Okay, take care.
We will take a quick break, head into the fun half in a moment.
We have Nomiki on. If we want to bring.
Oh, we do have Nomiki on. Okay, great. I should tell you that this show relies on your support to keep on trucking. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. And we have a couple of people who have taken up the offer of who are going through some financial stress. They have emailed at majorityreporters@gmail.com. have patience. We will, I promise you, we will get to you. Sometimes we get a little backed up. But if you are someone who can't afford to become a member but want the extra content, by all means, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. If you are someone who's been, listening to the show, enjoying the show, and you are fortunate enough to be financially secure at this time and can't afford a membership, by all means, we would really appreciate the support. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Don't forget also the AM Quickie. You can sign up for that at amquickie.com and justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY, get 10% off. Don't forget, check out the No McKee show, right? What are you doing this week?
I've been giving you the things I tape this week because we're a weekly show. So on this week's show, we have a very long interview with John Nichols and candidate Samalise Lopez, who's running in the Bronx. She's an extraordinary candidate. We show her video. Her campaign ad is like AOC worthy, and her story is too.
Amazing story. I interviewed her some time back, and it really, people should check her candidacy out.
Yeah,
really
she
impressive.
was homeless, and her mother escaped a domestic violence situation in Puerto Rico, and really worked her way up. And the strange thing is, I've actually known her out of all of the candidates that we've worked with, I actually knew her pretty well from activism. So it's nice to see people move up, and I'm really hoping that she pulls off a win, because who's to say that election's going to be 25 candidates, and no one knows what's going to happen. It's a low turnout district, in the poorest district in the country. So.
Yep. Stunning story she has. Also, tonight is Tuesday, so you can check out the Michael Brooks show at
We've got Maximilian Alvarez of Working People Pod on, and Adolph Reed returns for his second interview tonight.
Ooh.
It's only his second interview?
I think maybe we've second live interview, I should say.
Second live interview.
Yeah.
And you can find that at patreon.com TMBS, or The Michael Brooks Show on YouTube, youtube.com/The Michael Brooks Show. Also, check out The Antifada, patreon.com/The Antifada. And there's a lot of things going on this week for The Antifada. Jamie had like 3 or 4 different things that were happening over the course of the week. But so check that out. And Matt, what are you going to be doing on Twitch today?
Yeah, one thing happening at Literary Hangover, and it's called twitch.tv/Literary Hangover. I'm currently playing Kingdom Come Deliverance, listening to some Karl Kautsky and Perry Anderson on feudalism and early communism. So check that out, folks. Subscribe, twitch.tv/Literary Hangover.
There you go. All right, quick break. We'll be right back. Fun half.
All right, 1 second. Oh, shit. Here we go.
Here we go.
I'm still on.
Actually.
Well, yes, Matt, no problem.
My mic was on.
It's still on.
Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's a good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-2-38-56-27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy!
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my
my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck